Hello, my name's John. These are my Renegade Ogrins, and you're watching Wargames, Models, and Other Hobbies. Hello, and welcome back to another video. Today I'm answering a question that I got on my Renegade Ogrin video. I'll leave a link to that painting video in the description. Now, I really just want to start by saying I really love answering questions from people, and if I can do it in video form, even better. Something more for me to make. Really enjoy this kind of process of answering someone's questions. The question itself came from Snake Eyes on the painting of these Renegade Ogrins that I did. And their question was, so I'm new and going to paint some resin Renegade Militia models. They're on a tight budget, and they just want me to make a list of paints to get to a tabletop standard for their project. Now, I'd like to think that I've painted these to a tabletop standard. Something that I do see quite a lot when I'm kind of looking online is kind of people saying certain paint jobs are a certain standard and that kind of thing, especially when they're selling models and things like that. I paint to enjoy what I'm doing, so hopefully these would be acceptable as a tabletop standard, but it's down to individuals. Some people aren't necessarily keen on my painting style, other people like it, but that's your decision whether you think they are or not. Now, the models in question that Snake Eyes is going to be painting, I actually do have one, are the old Forge World Renegade Militia. Now, these go hand in hand with the Renegade Ogrins. So what I'm going to do is run through the paints I used to paint these, but then also how you could paint them with less paints. So firstly, the skin tones on the Ogrins. So we can see this raw flesh on them. For the models themselves, I used 4 paints. So I started with a Reikland Fleshshade, and then followed with Pallid Witch Flesh, Corax White, and then some Baal Red. This isn't the shade that you get anymore, but I'll talk about the alternative for that as I go through the kind of the process. I then got to all of the metallics on these models, so let's have a look at this one here with all of these metallics on here. For that I used Leadbelcher and Nuln Oil, and then for the fabrics themselves, so that kind of the muddied, leathery, kind of dirty fabrics, I used one of my all-time favourites, Devlan Mud, which isn't available anymore, but I'll talk about the alternatives. And then for my spot colour, which in the case of these ones is the eyes, I used Gaussian Blaster Green and Thraka Green. This one again isn't available now, but there is a replacement. So firstly, talking about alternatives for some of the paints that I used. The Baal Red, an equivalent for that now would be the Berserker Bloodshade. And then the Devlan Mud, the equivalent for that is Agrax Earthshade. And then the Thraka Green, the equivalent for that is the Biel-tan green shade. Now, key thing in the question was doing it on a budget. If you're new to the hobby, you don't want to spend tons and tons on something that you're not necessarily going to use again. So all of the paints that I used to paint these guys, so that's a total of 9 paints, including their equivalents instead of the ones that aren't available, actually comes to £34.75. It's quite expensive if this is jumping in at a beginner level. If you know you're going to be painting lots of things, those just go into stock, so it works quite nicely. But if you're there thinking, actually, I don't want to spend too much on all of these, What if I don't like the hobby? What paints do I need to get? So I had a look at the paints themselves to work out what you could get away with painting just these guys. So rather than using the Reikland Flesh and the Pallid Wych Flesh, for any of the flesh colours, I've gone with sticking with the Corax White, and then obviously no Baal Red, so using the Berserker Bloodshade. And to get the different tonal values on a palette, mixing the Corax White with different levels of that Berserker Bloodshade. So that would allow you to get those skin colours and things like that. Now the key thing is, with the Renegade Militia, they don't necessarily have any skin showing. There's one or two models that might do, but most of them don't. So you can actually get away with not having the skin shades in there at all. But I would recommend having a Corax White, because you can use that as a base coat without having to need to get a spray base or anything like that. So the first paint you're definitely going to need is Corax White. Then all of the metallics and the metals, I would recommend a Leadbelcher or one of the metallic paints. Just works a bit better having kind of one of the darker tones, I find. You could use a lighter tone silver or something, but I do prefer that Leadbelcher, so that is a must. As shades go, Nuln Oil is a brilliant one. You can paint it over everything to get all of your detail highlighted and things like that, so I would recommend Nuln Oil. And obviously you don't have Devlan Mud anymore, but you do have Agrax Earthshade, and that would do all of the fatigues and fabrics and things like that on these, but also a great shade to have. These two here, Nuln Oil and Agrax Earthshade, they are the basis of all of my painting techniques. Then it comes down to spot colours. So in the case of these ones, obviously I've got the spot colour green for the eyes. Originally used a green base and then a wash on top of that, but what I would do to save money is not use either of these, and I would go for just a Biel-tan green shade over the top of it and use the Corax White as a base. I can always mix a bit of that shade in with some Corax White to get a faint green if you want to start that straight away. So rather than using the 9 paints for the £34.75, it's a total of 5 paints for £19.75. Now the key thing is, the shades, they are quite expensive. They come in at about £4.75 a pot, compared to the other ones, which are £2.75. They are really good though, and it does allow you to highlight detail with just a simple colour underneath. Now I'll leave a list of all of the paints in the description, and I just want to say I hope this has answered the question from Snake Eyes about which paints to use. If you have any other questions about paints, about what paints are a must or what paints do really nice effects or things like that, please drop a comment. I'd be happy to make more videos to run through my thoughts and my processes on painting. It is one of the parts of the hobby that I do enjoy the most, although I don't get as much chance to do it as much as I'd like to. But yeah, if you drop a comment with any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. But for now, like I said, I hope this answers Snake Eye's question. But thanks for tuning in. My name's John, and you've been watching War Games, Models, and Other Hobbies.